So you know this little fella right here? Well, she should have been a juvenile. Let me explain. So for those of you who don't know, the Dilophosaurus in the first Jurassic Park is actually extremely different to the Dilophosaurus in real life. Dilophosaurus was actually quite a bit bigger than it was in the movie. To add on to that, it also didn't have a frill and didn't spit venom, but we're only looking at the Jurassic Park version for sake of this video. On top of that, in the novel, it was actually quite a bit bigger than it was in the movie. In fact, it was a lot more close in size to its real-life version. The small Dilophosaurus is only a Jurassic Park thing, which is interesting because I don't know the exact reasons why they decided to make it smaller for the movie. It could be a number of different reasons. Maybe it would have been an easier animatronic to make and to move around. Maybe it was just easier to pull off for that scene. I don't know the exact reasons. If any of you do know, let me know if there's like an interview or an article somewhere that I can read, because I'd love to know the exact reasoning why. But what I'm saying is that in later Jurassic films, it should have been established that that little guy was, in fact, a juvenile Dilophosaurus. Something like that, I think, could have added a lot more depth to the Jurassic franchise. Well, you know, a little bit of depth to a specific dinosaur in the Jurassic franchise. And I think it could have been a really cool reveal, because it was a long time since we saw the last Dilophosaurus. You know, the only time we saw Dilophosaurus was in the first Jurassic Park film. And then it had a little cameo in Jurassic World where it was a small hologram. And it was, of course, roughly the same size. And then again, we saw them in Camp Cretaceous in the later seasons where they were, again, the same size. And then finally, we saw them in Dominion, where they were once again the same size, which of course confirms that this is probably as big as they get in this universe. But I think that it's a missed opportunity, at least in the later films part, where they could have added a huge surprise element to the dinosaur. Like, picture it now. You're in that scene where Claire is being confronted by a Dilophosaurus, and she looks off into the brush, and she sees the small one and is making the little whistles and all that. And we as the audience is starting to get on edge, because in our mind we're thinking of the first Jurassic Park film and what that little creature did to a full-grown man. And so that already is building a ton of tension and making us a bit afraid of the situation that's about to unfold. But then as it starts to approach, it stops in its tracks, and you can hear more rustling off in the distance, and it turns its head, looking as if surprised, and then it quickly scurries off. And now we're like, oh shoot, it got scared off by something. There's going to be something worse that's coming. And then Claire looks off into that same direction. The camera follows, and what is revealed is a big Dilophosaurus. You know, one that is true to the size in both the novel and real life. And then that establishes that the Dilophosaurus that we're used to was simply a juvenile. And then suddenly a lot of alarms will go off in our head. We'll think, oh shoot, if a juvenile is able to take down a full-grown man, what can an adult do? And then that just builds a lot of suspense and tension about what this newly established Dilophosaurus is able to do to just a single person. And, you know, all in all, I think that would have acted as a retcon, because I don't think it was ever really their intention that the first Dilophosaurus was a juvenile. I mean, there was this line from Nedry.
Thought you were one of your big brothers. You're not so bad.
When I was a child, I always interpreted that as him thinking that there was like a bigger Dilophosaurus and that this was just a little guy. But of course, Nedry probably didn't know the difference between dinosaurs anyway, and he was probably just thinking of a bigger dinosaur in general. But, you know, you probably could have just changed it up, and, like, you know, if you reveal a bigger Dilophosaurus, you could probably rethink Nedry's line and think, oh, maybe he was talking about the Dilophosaurus specifically. I mean, you know, he probably wasn't, but if they made this change, then it probably would have. I just think that would have been a really fun retcon and would have added a lot of suspense to a movie that I think really needed it. In my Quetzalcoatlus video, I mentioned that I think that Dominion suffers from quantity over quality. You know, we didn't really get to slow down with any of the other animals, so they didn't really have a moment to shine. And this would have been Dilophosaurus' moment to shine. I mean, I think they should have cut out some other dinosaurs, and they probably shouldn't have had as many things as they did. And if you just had a segment where you're focused on a bigger Dilophosaurus, and that's like a huge problem that isn't just solved by Owen coming in and, you know, grabbing it on its venom sac. You know, something that is a little bit more tricky to solve and puts us on the edge of our seats. But anyway, that by this point, I'm just rambling on. Tell me what your thoughts on this subject is. Do you think it should have been a juvenile, or do you think that it's fine the way it is? Be sure to let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have an awesome day.